Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Sunday edition of Dan-A-Plooza. Hopefully you're checking this out before your football daily TV watching, so I appreciate everybody. My guest at this time is quite a magnificent, dynamic duo. Let's give it up for Tonya and Joey Madia.
Thanks, Dan.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome. So I have some questions that I would like to ask you. Why do you believe that the paranormal is still so popular to this day?
Go ahead.
I think it's really a matter of most people have at one point or another in their life experienced something unexplainable. And they're very curious about it. So I also think that there's that element of excitement and a little bit of fear. People love that. People love horror movies. And, I think it's important to remember, though, that the paranormal isn't necessarily like horror movies. In fact, it's really not like horror movies at all, but for the most part, occasionally.
Thankfully, very rare.
Yeah, it's very rare, but occasionally it does happen. But really, at the end of the day, I think, too, when it comes to certain topics within the realm of the paranormal, there's survival of consciousness after death, and we're all going to die at some point or another. And I don't think there's anyone on this planet, or at least probably very few people on this planet, who are not curious about what happens after we die. So I think that's why the interest in the paranormal is so great.
It's interesting because I was thinking about that before I came on, so I feel like you're kind of reading a little bit of my mind, because I was going to talk about the...
It's like I'm psychic.
Exactly, you knew this and everything. But yeah, I was wondering about the differential between, the expectations of film and and the paranormal, and sometimes people, they are concerned that they're gonna, be possessed, or something's going to happen, and that that they're not going to be able to help themselves during a paranormal spiritual activity.
Right. So that's a legitimate concern. So I think there's two or three parts, and I'll go through them quickly. The first one is, like Tonya said, reality is much different than, you're an actor, you've been in films, I'm a writer, actor, Tonya. We have to entertain, we have to keep attention. I think a sideline of that is the reality TV shows, which are incredibly popular. And they brought a lot of attention. I want to say they brought legitimacy. I think they brought more interest, because they've sort of delegitimized the field in a way, because when you talk to paranormal investigators like us that don't do that big splashy stuff and don't say that everything is a demon, then people either are bored or wonder if you're not doing your job right. So the spiritual aspect comes in very handy, and I think that's where people should start, in white light of protection, of especially knowing what your intention is, because it's like dialing a phone. Depending on what number you dial, who's going to answer is really going to say what kind of experience you're going to have. So if you misuse things like Ouija boards and spirit boxes and pendulums and different communication devices, or you just go to a haunted place and you say, hey, whatever's here, come get me, you don't know what's going to come. So Tonya and I try to keep very mission-based. So we won't go to a place. People will ask us, have you gone to a Waverly Hill Sanitarium or so? We won't go to a place simply because it has a reputation for being haunted. We prefer to use our skills and our time to help people who are having trouble with a haunting, who called in something, inherited a haunted object that's causing problems, moved into a house that's haunted and active, and they want to mediate it. So I think those are the differentiations between the three things.
And again, I was reading about the sanatorium, before I so again,
Oh wow,
double
Waverly
mind reading,
We're not. We promise you.
They'll know my taxes next.
I
I hope that they're low.
They are.
Good.
But I will share this story because I've been to the lunatic asylum. And,
Trans-Allegheny.
Yes.
Yes, us too.
And I don't know if you know about the story about the little girl
Yes.
that was a dancer. So she has a music box, and apparently it's got a little ballerina, and it plays ballet music, and sometimes she likes to dance and you see like a figure, So when I went with my girlfriend, at the time I was like, hey, not thinking, I was like, hey, pick this up, and just look at it, and we open the box and like it just starts playing by itself. Like it wasn't winded up, it started playing on its own. And so then I became nervous and I was like, I didn't touch it. I tried to tell her not to touch, I tried to place blame, but again, that's one of those things. Sometimes when we touch somebody's object, we're expecting, some kind of experience or something's going to happen because of that. We forget that sometimes those objects could be very personable, even when they pass on.
Mm-hmm. I always say, people don't change that much just because they drop their bodies. So I like to think of ghosts as just people without bodies. And I show them the same level of respect that I would show a living person or a person with a body. So you wouldn't go in and start touching, other people's things without their permission if they were alive. So yeah, I think your philosophy is excellent.
Yep. And just like how I've perceived myself, especially when I cross over, and I said, if anybody's ever looking for me, because I enjoy the Mountain Dew as well as my cat. If you see Mountain Dew missing, we've been there.
There you go. That
awesome.
sometimes happens. Sometimes we take the extreme example is taking an addiction with you. So you'll smell cigarette smoke, or the bars will be haunted. Yeah. Or in really extreme situations, an addict will be haunted by another addict who's getting something from their field. And the danger of that is the addict will either fall off the wagon and start using again. Or we've heard that, or they'll start to increase their usage. So of course that's a bad scenario. We don't want to say that bad things don't happen. We do believe that dark entities exist, and you can term some of them demons. And you have to be careful. You had a nice pick lobotomy at Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. You were walking someplace where
I was going. I forget which wing it was. I want to think it was the west.
I want to say that too.
But anyway, it wasn't open for tourists. Joey's theater company was doing a show there, so we had access to a part of the building that normally you wouldn't have access to. And I wasn't part of the show, so I was just there and I was wandering around by myself. And as a medium, I was seeing all the spirits, just kind of shuffling around. And it was starting to get dark. It was around dusk, and here I am all by myself with all these spirit people around, and it was getting a little creepy. So I started heading back toward where the performers were. And I got this stabbing pain right in the corner of my eye. And you probably know when they used to do the lobotomies, they would take an ice pick and they would put it right in the corner of the eye and give it a little tap or two, scramble the prefrontal lobe of the brain. So I get this stabbing, incredible, intense pain in the corner of my eye. And I started doing Reiki. I started trying to clear my energy field. And then later we found out that I was not the only person to have experienced that. And there was a doctor back when the hospital was operating, who was known for being lobotomy happy, I guess. So other guests who have been there have experienced the same thing.
Right, we saw it on TV on one of the paranormal shows. They had gone back, and the same exact thing happened to someone. They called him Dr. Lobotomy, and I think he did about 100 lobotomies a week. He would travel around to all the places. So of course that's a negative, dense energy, and you really you prefer. And our daughter Jolie, who's also a talented psychic medium, you two prefer not to go to those kinds of places, prisons and asylums.
Yeah, to me, I talk about the Trans-Allegheny Asylum. It's an amazing building. I don't mean this to mean anything about the building or the people who own it or run it, but because of its history. Hi, Kitty.
Hey.
Because of its history, I think it's one of the most psychically filthy places I've ever been, because there's just so much suffering there. The energy, the vibrational energy of it is very low. It's very frenetic. It's very, oppressive. And so when we go to people who are very open, who are very empathetic, when they go to places like that, tend to become overwhelmed, as my daughter and I do. So we don't like to go to like prisons, asylums, any place
Moundsville Prison, to keep it in West Virginia. Yeah. That's another place, and there's a museum not far from there of haunted objects. And Old Sparky, the skull cap, is there.
Oh, yeah.
And I got probably within 6 feet of that thing, not realizing it, just walking through, looking at it, at all the displays. And it felt like someone took and gave me a punch right in my solar plexus. I said, what was that? And I looked up, and there's Old Sparky. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been there before too. I didn't really experience anything when I went there, but I know sometimes the tour guide said former prisoners would tour there sometimes as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that would make me feel awkward just touring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's a very foreboding building, and you saw them looking out the windows.
I saw
we did some filming across the street at the Mound.
One gentleman in particular looking out the window.
Yeah, so those are heavy places, and you just have to be careful. You have to protect yourself. When you touch the box, best thing to do, I think, is follow through once you've made the commitment. Maybe the best thing overall is not to touch the box, but say you've inadvertently touched a haunted object. Keep your vibration high. Say, I mean you no harm. If you'd like to communicate, that's fine. I meant no disrespect. And that's more positive than getting afraid or passing blame, because the lower the vibration goes, then you're connecting with darker entities who tend to be opportunistic.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Like a thief or someone like that. Yeah.
I think that's really good advice, and I think that's something that people should take with them, because there is always sometimes that when you're in fear, sometimes you just touch or grab something, out of fear, and sometimes you don't use your best judgment when you're in that fear mode.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we've been doing this for 12 years, and there are some decisions, some actions that we took that we wish that we could take back, because they caused not major harm, but were mistakes. So we all make mistakes. It's very complicated stuff when you can't see or you can't hear, and you're only feeling, or your curiosity gets the best of you. I'm famous for that. I was like, oh, let's go in that room. No, like a psychic medium will say, there's a bad thing trying to lure you into that room. So we all have to really stay on our toes when we do this work.
Yeah. I think that's a good thing. I was also reading earlier about the lighthouse in St. Augustine, and that is also haunted. There are people who used to run the lighthouse people, and sometimes there are still people who have passed who are still trying to run the lighthouse like during the evening. Would that be something that you wouldn't mind investigating, since it's not really like the prisons and the other places,
Great question.
Oh yeah, I mean, we love going to historic locations, and
right.
Not that prisons and asylums are not historic locations, but the web library, which we investigated for 3 years, but a lighthouse would be amazing. It's not at all uncommon if somebody, especially they were very proud of their job or just very attached to their job, that they would remain attached and feel their duty continue beyond the death of the physical body. That's a very common thing. But it could also be not knowing anything about that particular lighthouse, but it could also be a residual haunting where a lighthouse keeper is going to have the same duties probably around the same time, day after day after day, and that's going to leave an energetic imprint on the space. So it could be either, or sometimes it can be both.
Yeah, when I read about it, there are those, and then I think there are two sisters that were related to the keepers, and they sometimes go there, I think, as well. Their spirit, is also there. Because I imagine sometimes it would get very lonely working up there,
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. It takes a certain kind of person. We've Fort Macon, Fort Macon, North Carolina, soldiers up on the parapets. So that kind of repetitive duty where you're also kind of nervous. So there's an energetic energy there. Old time railroads at the crossing stations, very stressful and lonely job, a lot of concentration. Those tend to do, like Tonya said, a residual haunting. So quick difference. Residual is an imprint, energetic imprint. You can try to talk to it all day and get it to alter its movements. It's not going to. It's like a film loop almost.
Okay.
An energetic imprint. And then there's sentient hauntings. And there are really a good bit of those.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a spirit or a ghost who can communicate with you freely and aren't tied necessarily to a place. They can follow you home. So follow homes are another thing you have to really be careful about, when you're doing the work.
Yeah, and I think that's something to definitely keep in mind, because sometimes a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, they don't know all the knowledge that they don't know, like, they are sometimes a lot of curious and lots of questions
Yeah.
when they're first going on that. So is there really anything good you can say for people who are just starting out, maybe like what good books to read, or for anybody that's interested that's just very new and green?
I would say, of course, depending on what topic in the paranormal they're interested in, but let's just say they're interested in exploring a haunted location, since that's what we've been mainly talking about. Definitely do your research on the property itself. You know where you're going. Don't trespass. So if you haven't been invited to the property and it's not open for the public, please don't.
Right. You have to follow the laws.
Yeah, don't trespass into places. Just because they're abandoned doesn't mean they're okay for you to go into. Always be safe. Think about your intention. Why are you going? Are you just going out of sheer curiosity? Are you going because you just want a good scare? I mean, are you going because you're genuinely curious about what's going on? What a cutie. And then, everything, as Joey mentioned earlier, everything is about intention. So if you're just going for, kicks or whatever, you may want to really consider where you're going, why you're going, so on and so forth.
Don't provoke.
Respect, as I mentioned earlier. Think of any ghosts or spirits that you encounter in any location. If you have an experience, keep in mind that these are most likely just people without bodies. Treat them as you would treat anybody else. It's very rare that you're going to run into something like a demonic presence. You can. So with that said, that's again why intention is so important. So you do want to keep your energetic vibration high. You want to envision white light around yourself. Protective stones are a great thing. Another thing that I recommend, keep a notebook. Document what's happening, because you're not going to remember it later. You're going to think you're going to remember it later, but you're not going to probably remember the details exactly. And then when you do leave, again, energetically, like either kind of sweep your energy field. We used to go, when we lived by the beach, we'd go stand by the ocean and let the saltwater, air kind of cleanse our energy fields. But whatever it is you do, you may just come home and take a shower. But you really want to cleanse your energy field, kind of break the connection, because you can pick up even if you're not having a follow home, you may just pick up some real icky like energy that was just kind of hanging around the place.
Absolutely. It's always good as you're leaving to say, okay, anything that's here or anyone that's here, stay here, please.
Yeah.
Just stay here, please. Announce your attention. And then I would really say we were mentored. We were very lucky. We were mentored for a decade by Rosemary Ellen Guiley, author of over 60 books. You can't do any better than Rosemary. So Rosemary Ellen Guiley, Guiley. You find her books everywhere. And I'm going to humbly suggest, because she was our mentor and we did the work and she, published the books, there's our Watch Out for the Hallway, our 2-year investigation of the most haunted library, North Carolina. There's a lot of good advice, how to use the tools and all of that. And then our follow-up book was Roommates from Beyond, How to Live in a Haunted Home. And this is really a handbook about do's and don'ts. And I would say get a mentor. Mm-hmm. If you want to do this kind of work, rather than go off by yourself or go in a team, find a mentor who's been doing it for a good long time. I would say at least 5 years. And go along with them and learn over time. We went on our first investigation by ourselves 7 years after Rosemary mentored us before we accepted to do. Yeah, because we get emails from people that say, we thought we were going to help this person and we made it worse, and now you need us to help. So don't advertise yourself as a paranormal investigator or an exorcist or a psychic cleanser, or you have to be really careful.
And I think that's important to keep in mind. Sometimes people have all these expectations, and that goes back to the shows you were saying earlier. They think that sometimes, you could come in and just be done and rid of it. You're not like a Ghostbuster. You're not eliminating them. You're not always there. I mean, you answer the call, but like the way things are handled, I think there's only limitations in so much what you can do.
Yeah, every situation's unique, right?
Yeah, every situation's unique. And I was just going to say, whenever if we get called on to help somebody, we're there to help. Bottom line, we're not there to pique our curiosity. We're there to help. We're there to help the people who are living, who are maybe being scared or inconvenienced or whatever, and we're also there to help those who are remaining, who've left their bodies, to cross over, should that be what they want, because sometimes they don't want to. So then you have to figure out, okay, well, what's a good compromise here? So, and again, just because somebody doesn't have a body doesn't mean that they shouldn't be treated with the utmost level of respect.
Absolutely.
Now, does that this has always been curious. Does that happen for animals as well? Do they also have their spirits? And is that something that you've ever encountered?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you want to talk about animals after they cross over, and I'll talk about animals while they're still alive.
Well, as a medium, I have clients all the time ask me, I just lost my dog or my cat or what have you, and I am able to connect with the pet. Pets are interesting because they communicate in a similar fashion once they're dead that humans do. They'll show me images, or they'll show me little sort of like film strip kind of things. I had my favorite one was someone had recently lost her dog, and he kept showing me his dog dish and something like very particular, like with the water in the dish, and I couldn't figure out, but that's like, he kept showing me that. And she was cracking up. She was like, he always had this thing, like he would always get water all over the place. So, and then there was a ball that she had kept, and he kept showing me this one particular ball that I was able to describe. So that was, his way of letting her know that, I wasn't just imagining that I was connecting with her pet. He gave me very specific things that I could let her know that he was still around.
Right. And living pets, especially dogs and cats, are great early warning system. So if they're barking at something that's not there, meowing or getting their hackles up, their tails going between their legs, it is something to pay attention to if you think you may have a haunting. And animals are vulnerable. we had a case we're going to be presenting on in a couple of months at a conference where 2 cats died. They starved to death. And so a dark, opportunistic entity, such as was haunting these people's home and making life very difficult for them. If the animals are the alarm system, you want to disable the alarm system. And even while we were there, one of the cats stood up on its hind legs and stood up and was looking around. So you want to take care of your pets just like you would your children or your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your parents, whoever you live with. If you think something's up, look into it. But they're wonderful. Our son has just adopted out a Aussie healer pit mix. And she's, over the course of the 3 weeks, she makes the rounds of the house and checks all the windows. And if there are odd noises, we do have some ghosts living in the house. We have a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't seem to be aware of those. So not every pet is necessarily going to show that they're in tune to it. Either that, or they get it and it doesn't bother them, and
she
and
may
they're fine.
see him and she just thinks he's
a regular human because he means no harm.
Any other person.
Yeah, his great point. His energy is very fun. This little boy, he's yeah. So great question about pets. Yeah.
Well, and just even my pet, I know she's been making appearances. That's Tilly. So Tilly is very protective. Tilly has this thing where she thinks if someone's coming, she'll go up on top of the fridge, and then if she thinks someone's going to enter, she's going to jump and do like a body cross and knock that person. That's her defense mechanism.
Oh my God, that's awesome. A guard cat.
She's precious. I love when she came on your shoulder like your pirate with the parrot and kind of put her head next to you. That's wonderful. How long have you had Tilly?
Tilly, I got her on my birthday. 2018. She's going to be 4.
Nice.
She was given up twice before I got her, so she lived with a bunch of hoarders, and then there was an elderly person, and she just couldn't take care of her anymore. So, because she was having health issues, so.
Well, she was meant for you.
Yeah, that's clear. That was precious when she did that. That was wonderful.
Well, what's interesting was I got attacked by another cat at the place that I was getting her by a cat named Shredder. And she, what a name for a kitty.
Yeah, living up to their name,
I guess.
And so I got like clawed there on the thumb. And so when I took Tilly out, she was kind of trying to nuzzle and lick the wound and fix it, when I pulled her out, so I kind of knew that she was the one because she was like that. And then she also swatted her paw at Shredder's cage. So, there was protective alreadiness.
Yeah. And there is that heightened sense. And cats spend a lot of time in the alpha state. So they're sort of in this semi-waking liminal state. So hyper attuned. So that's wonderful. Best to you and Tilly.
Yes.
Yep, I believe that we will cross over together with Mountain Dew in hand. That'll lead us together.
Is Tilly supposed to be having Mountain Dew? I don't know. I'm not a cat owner. I don't know.
It's really just a joke because I spilled it one day and she licked it, but I always like to make the joke in the afterlife of the fridge of like somebody tall pulling out that, and then somebody like a cat really short knocking it, rolling on the floor.
Well, we will keep an eye out for that, although I hope it's decades from now.
But we always think that would be really funny.
Yeah, and they can be. Ghosts and spirits can really be funny. They can be sarcastic. They can be nasty in the way that someone, this is a favorite thing that I like to say. We were using the spirit box, and I said, so what are you looking at? One of our mentors had said, like, ask them what they see. So I said, what do you see? And you hear this very stern female voice go, what do you see?
Ah.
So, yeah, so it's like, okay, so for this person, this doesn't work. So it's mostly joyous, and that's what we try to let people know.
And I think that is a good point for people to keep in mind. You've touched on a lot of good points of just being friendly, with them and treating them like a person, and the expectations. I already feel like this has kind of been like a knowledge of class. I'm just should be sitting with pen and paper, jotting notes.
You can talk to us. You can talk to us anytime, and people can watch our show on Thursday nights, Into the Outer Realms, 7 p.m. You've so graciously put up there. It's every Thursday night. We just passed 100 episodes. This week, we're talking about something that you asked about, and we talked about a little. We're doing haunted objects with our roundtable of contributors. Yeah, so we'll be talking about the haunted dolls like Annabelle and all that stuff people want to hear about, and haunted mirrors, but we'll also talk about very positive things that people have from loved ones who have passed over. They have something where their spirit remains. So like with anything, and teach people how to protect themselves when you go antique shopping. You don't want to get something attached to you. So people can tune in if they're interested in more of this. And we're educators by nature.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I have another great question. What do you say when there are pictures sometimes when people take a picture and they see the orb, or they think they see a face or something? What can you say, like, that is maybe for you or from other people you've talked to, where they sometimes see an object in their photograph?
I think with pictures, you have to take more into account than just the photo. First of all, what was happening when the photo was taken? Do you have any other corroborative evidence? Was there something coming through on the PSV-11? Did you have a psychic medium there who was also picking something up at that same time? I'll give you a good example of that at the Webb Memorial Library. In this one hallway, if you would hold up your smartphone with the camera on, the facial recognition square would come up. Like if I was seeing a spirit standing there and somebody else would hold their camera up, the facial recognition would come where I was seeing the person's face. So you have that corroboration of other evidence. So photos are tricky because you have pareidolia. So you maybe you think you see a face there, and maybe it is. Maybe it very legitimately
pareidolia
is. Pareidolia is, the human brain seeks to create patterns and familiar patterns, particularly the human face. So you will see a face, and it may or may not be a face. So not to throw everything out, but that's why you need those other points of information in terms of what was going on when the photo was taken. So just to have a photo of something isn't necessarily evidence or proof of anything, but if you can combine it with a lot of other things, then that's a lot more helpful.
Digital cameras bring all kinds of artifacts, so that makes it really difficult. The light is distorted, you have pixelation, those kinds of things. With orbs, because orbs is a very popular one, I always look for a change of direction that wouldn't account for dust. So if it's moving across and all of a sudden it drops straight down, or even better, it starts to move up like that, it could, unless a heating vent or something's come out. So you look at your environment always. The other thing with orbs is sometimes size or density. If you blow them up, sometimes you can see things inside of them that are harder to explain. Bugs are really tough because bugs will look like orbs and they'll really mess with things. You have to know where light is coming from. So we had a night where we were at the Greene County Historical Museum in Pennsylvania, kind of becoming a famous haunted place now, is just on TV. And we got in kind of early, which was nice, and did some investigating. But there were these light artifacts on these photos. And I think it took 8 people about 20 minutes to realize that it was these cars that you couldn't see, but the camera was getting reflections of the headlights. So I think that's what the reality shows can't show, because they're packing everything into either 20 minutes or 45 minutes.
Yeah.
There's so much tedious. Great, I ran the EVP recorder. Now I got to sit home for 6 hours and listen to these recordings. I have to watch hours of footage and try to figure out, oh, was that an orb, and was some, so that's, yep.
Yeah, I've have some photos where there's like an orb, like just like right there by me, like on my shoulder. And sometimes my friends will be like, "What did you say?" And I'm like, "Nothing." Like
Do
I
you want to
wasn't.
address that quick?
Yeah.
With an orb on the shoulder, you mean?
Well, an orb that appears like in close proximity to a person.
Oh, well, I mean, obviously, oftentimes that can be a spirit presence.
But usually benevolent, protective.
Yeah, usually benevolent. But that's why I say, it's also great if you can have a psychic medium. You can't always have one handy, but you had someone there who said, "Oh, I'm seeing someone standing over your right shoulder right now," and then the photo's taken, and then there's the orb. So then you have two pieces of evidence to go by. But again, too, trust your own gut. That's the biggest thing I say to folks when you were asking about, advice for beginners. Trust your experience. So if you feel like you're being watched, you're probably being watched. If you feel like someone's standing next to you, trust that. If you're getting an image in your mind's eye, go with that image. It's probably correct, because I'm never really a fan of the word psychic, because it gives the implication that some people have these special abilities and other people don't have them. We all have these abilities. It's just a matter of learning to trust them and develop them.
I think that's an excellent point. I just know that I've only had like really one encounter where I remember I was very terrified, and it was at the lunatic asylum, and my hands were shaking, and I bit my lip out of fear, and then there was a piece of that missing from the fear of that, and I felt like it was cold, and I felt like someone was near, even though I couldn't see anything. And I felt like I was in shock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that could be something that was malevolent. Oftentimes when you see someone and the orbs are around them and they didn't even know, or they might say, "Oh, I just kind of had a happy feeling that," or it's grandma or grandpa or someone like, or a pet. If Tilly, God forbid, does go before you someday, then you may feel her on your shoulder if that's where she was most comfortable, and she may show up as an orb. So yeah.
Yeah, but I was always wondering, like, now knowing what you told me, like having that positive energy, I feel like I could have handled it better, but you don't know sometimes when you're so new and nothing,
Right.
You feel very vulnerable.
You do, and it's hard to say to people, "Oh, don't be afraid. Don't let fear factor in." But it is really important, if you're able to manage your fear, do anything that you can to try to manage your fear. If you're in an experience like that, sing, laugh, think of something, happy, or whatever you need to do, because that energy of fear is something that low vibrational entities love to. It's like a buffet. It's like a fear buffet for them. So, and they can use that energy to manifest more activity. So to do more things to scare you even further. So it becomes sort of this big, feedback loop.
And sometimes you just have to leave.
Yeah.
Right.
So a couple years ago, right, we've been doing this for 12, we're coming up on 13 years now. And we drove 4 hours to meet part of our investigative team, and we were going to investigate for 2 nights at a certain place. We go to that place, and all 4 of us got out of the car and immediately looked at each other and went, "There's something wrong here." And it may be human. We don't know what it is, but the vibe is off. We got in the car and we went to the hotel room and we said, "No investigation tonight." So you have to, and that's really hard sometimes.
Yeah.
It's really hard sometimes.
It's really hard when you specifically go there, for that purpose. But that's where, again, I say, trust your instincts. Always trust your instincts, because there could have been something, again, like Joey said, completely not paranormal, but we could have been in danger from, any number of things, and we were all sensing it and feeling it. So
It's the dark, it's the woods. It could be hunters, it could be
Right.
bullies, or a group of people who are just waiting in prey because they know investigators come by. So you don't know, or it could have been paranormal.
It could have
We
been
don't
paranormal.
know.
We've experienced very dark entities out there, but at the end of the day, just if you're getting that feeling, if your hackles are going up and your insides are screaming, run away, you maybe just want to leave.
Yep. So before we wrap it up, is there anything you'd like to say or promote here on Dan-A-Plooza?
No, I mean, we appreciate the time. We told folks about our books, and they're available on Amazon through Kindle and as paperbacks. And if they have questions or anything, the best thing to do is to follow the Into the Outer Realms Facebook page, which you have right down there. And we'd love for you to tune in and give us a try on Thursday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, Into the Outer Realms Facebook page. Dan, you drop by every 2 or 3 weeks, and we're very honored and pleased by that. So thank you.
Yep. And I'd like to remind everybody that we have a great lineup in February. This is all the guests that we have. We have Pro Wrestling Ronnie Nicole, All Natural Ashley, The Woad on Friday, February the 11th. So check that out. Also on the 21st, we have Carrie Humberger Schramm, who is an artist who does all kinds of horror stuff. The Mothman mug, she knows that. We have actor and producer Joran. He was recently involved in American Rust with Jeffrey Daniels, so he'll be here. Destiny Beard. She is a singer-songwriter. She also does like the goth. So she's also a great guest, actor, producer, and also founder of a small convention called Four State Comic Con. He's also the co-promoter of Carolina Fear Fest, Matt Burns, and then finally podcast sensation, the Garbage Pail Queen. That will all be here in February.
Awesome. I watched the Garbage Pail Queen last time she was on your show. I watched that episode. So great.
Oh, yeah.
Way to keep busy, Dan. You're doing great work.
Doing great.
Thank you, everybody, for Dan-A-Plooza. We'll see you in February. Stay warm, stay safe, and best avoid the snow. Have a good night. Take care.
Bye-bye.